recording. All right. And let me also put the chat in case you have questions or comments. All right. So you'll see that the session or the process we are going to be explaining today, the one that relates to the troop scenario, it's very similar to the one we saw yesterday for contingent owned equipment. Okay, so today this process is going to be used to transport or to deploy the troops that are deployed in the missions, and the troops together with the luggage and any other equipment that is transported together with the troops. As we said in the WebEx that we did for the introduction to this process, main difference compared to COE is that in the troop scenario, the transportation is always managed via flight. Remember that yesterday for COE, the transportation mode was the transportation mode that is mainly used for COE. It's sea. For troops, it's going to be always flight, and we will manage only transportation from airport to airport. So for COE and UNOE, we were talking about different legs to manage transportation from beginning to end. Let's say from the, for example, for the UNOE, from the factory up to the mission. Okay, so we can have different legs. One could be road, and the main freight order being the, for example, the vessel, VSC, and the last leg again with a truck to reach the final mission. With troops, we only manage the transportation from airport to airport. We don't care about how the troops will reach the different airports. So we only manage the transportation from the origin airport to the destination airport. All right. So we will not repeat the overview that we did in the first WebEx early December about the overview of the process. So we will focus today on the steps in the system. So we will basically do the steps in the system. So in case you want to you have any question about the process, just use the chat. Okay. All right. So for troops, remember that we have our phases, right? The first phase will be the low list. Okay. In this case, the low list is going to be a different one, a different template compared to the one we showed yesterday for COE. Then we'll have the planning part, the transportation planning part for the transportation, where we have the stage. I mean, we have two different scenarios, right? As Brian was saying yesterday. We have the LOA scenario. So LOA means the letter of assist, by which the troops contributing country, the TCC, is responsible for deploying the troops. So if we are in a LOA scenario, UN will not manage the transportation, and everything, the transportation will be managed directly by the troops contributing country. In case we are in a non-LOA scenario, where there is no letter of assist, meaning that the troops contributing country will provide the troops to the UN, but the UN has to arrange its own transportation. In a non-LOA scenario, the UN will be responsible for managing the deployment or managing the transportation of the troops from the origin country to the mission. Okay, so depending on the scenario, either if it's LOA or non-LOA, the process will be different. Once we have planned the transportation, meaning that we know which is going to be the route, or which is going to be the date where the troops will be traveling. In the case of a non-LOA, in the case where the UN has to provide the transportation, the UN will have to procure the freight. Okay, and this only applies for the non-LOA when there is no letter of assist. And once we have procured the freight, then we'll have the execution and monitoring, where we can track in TM and in CCP the different events and the different documentation that is related to that transportation. Okay, so this is basically the same end-to-end process we were reviewing for UNOE and COE, and we will do that in the system and basically explain the main differences that are specifically for troops. Okay, so regarding the low list, okay, there will be an Excel low list that will be similar to the one for COE, but with some different fields for troops, and we will do that also in Excel. And once we have the low list, as Brian was showing to you yesterday, that Excel file will generate a TXT file, okay, together with another Excel that we will not use, but the text file is the one we can use in TM to do the upload, and with that upload, the system will automatically create the forwarding order. Okay, so the forwarding order will be like the document in TM, the document in the transportation management module in Umoja that represents the Excel file we just uploaded. Okay, the forwarding order will also trigger the creation of the freight units. Okay, so with one step, with the Excel upload, the system will create, as for the COE, the Excel will create two related documents, the forwarding order and the freight units. Okay, now this is basically very similar to the process we showed yesterday for COE. All right, so let's have a look at the Excel file for troops. Okay, for troops we have two different Excel files. So one that is used for the deployment and repatriation, and as you can see, it's very similar to the one for COE. One difference will be that the source and destination location will be always airports. As we said, with troops, we only manage transportation between airports. So source location and destination locations in a troop scenario should always be airports. Okay, and it works in a very similar way. So in this case, we don't have the summary tab as we had yesterday with the COE. Okay, but we will need to fill in directly the page or this screen, this tab that we are displaying right now. Okay, so by changing this tab, the ones that basically are in red. Okay, so we will change this one, and automatically, based on the reference location. So this reference location are, as Brian was explaining yesterday, are lookup tables. Okay, so we will not indicate the airports, but by indicating the cities, the system will look up the related airport. As we said for COE yesterday, these templates are still being reviewed, so they might change a little bit, and it happened while we were in New York that they were changing these templates, but the concept will remain the same. Okay, so we have source location, destination location, then we have the dates. Okay, the pickup from the source airport and the delivery to the final airport. We have the products that are different compared to what we discussed yesterday for COE. So in this case, CHOCS represents the different flights. Okay, so in this case, the different flights that we are trying to arrange with this transportation. So in this case, we are talking about 2 flights. All right. We have, for those 2 flights, we have some cargo baggage and cabin baggage, and we have the number, the quantity number for each, and weight and volume for each cargo baggage and cabin baggage. Right. So this within this chart, within these 2 flights, we are asking, or we are requesting either the UN or the troops contributing country to transport this related baggage. Okay. We have, let's have a look at the last line in this Excel, right? So we are asking the troops contributing country to transport 200 troops, 200 people within these two flights. And we have 4 different products that explain the type of flights. Okay, so we will have one inbound flight, okay, to reach the mission, and one outbound flight to go back, okay. So we have depositioning flight, outbound flight, inbound flight, and positioning flight. Okay, so these depositioning and positioning flights were different products that they were adding while we were in New York, just to get the charges to get the flight to the source destination. For example, in this case, the transportation will be from Frankfurt Airport to Juba. Okay, so the depositioning flight represents the need to get a flight positioned in Frankfurt. That will be the explanation of the positioning flight. Okay, so inbound, the inbound means the transportation from origin to destination, and the positioning means that we need to position a flight into the source location. So not the flight is not available there at the source to transport the passengers. Okay, to transport the troops. Okay, so by using these products, we are somehow specifying the number of flights, number of baggages that are related to that transportation, and how many troops we will need to transport into that transportation request. Okay. This TOD means the period of duty. Okay, so how long will the troops will be staying there in the mission, represented in months. Okay. Then we have the forwarding order group. So that's a number that represents how many forwarding orders we will create, because differently to what Brian explained yesterday for COE, with one upload for troops, we can create several forwarding orders. So if we copied these lines and put them just below with a different forwarding order group number, with only one upload, we will be able to create several forwarding orders. Okay, so in this case, we are assigning only one forwarding order group, and that will mean that the system will only create one forwarding order. Okay, movement types, that the DE means deployment, so we can have set DE for deployment and set RE for repatriation. And with the troops, we can also manage the rotation, meaning that we transport to the mission a bunch of troops, and then we repatriate at the same time. Using the outbound flight, we repatriate the troops that are already deployed in the mission, so we do a kind of rotation of the troops. So by the movement type, with this field, we specify the type of transportation requirement. If we are requesting a deployment, a repatriation, or rotation, right? Then we have the MOU. This base BTD reference is the reference to the MOU, and this base BTD reference we will see later on in the system that can be used when we try to look for forwarding orders. That this field is one of the ones we can use to retrieve all the related forwarding orders. So similarly, what we did in the UNOE, that we were looking for DTRs based on our purchase order or our inbound delivery, this reference, this base BTD reference, it's a field we can use later on to look for all the related forwarding orders. Okay. Incoterm. The Incoterm, we are using standard Incoterms to indicate if we are talking about LOA or non-LOA scenario. So I think we already mentioned that yesterday, right, Ryan, about the XWorks and DAP. So do you remember yesterday what we said about the Incoterms? So in here it appears XWorks. So what would that mean in our troop scenario? Would it mean LOA or non-LOA? Okay, very good, Concheta. So it will be non-LOA. So we are using standard Incoterms. So if we put here XWorks, it will be a non-LOA. If we indicate here DAP, it will be a LOA scenario. Okay, so XWorks, if we put XWorks, means that we will upload in the system a transportation request in which the UN is responsible for the transportation. If we put DAP, we will upload a request, but transportation will be fully managed by the troops contributing country. All right. In here, we indicate the troops contributing country, and we do that by referencing the country. So we can just indicate Germany, and Excel will automatically do a VLOOKUP into the reference TCC missions tab. So it will look here for Germany, and automatically will retrieve the BP for that member country. And the same thing for the plant. So as a user, we can type the name of the mission, and the system will again go back to the reference TCC mission. It will look for MINUSMA and will automatically retrieve the plant. In this case, it's ML10, and will indicate here the code for the plant. Okay. So we have a question about the movement type that we explained here. If there is any kind of VLOOKUP, drop-down selection, something like that. So in the version that we have for the Excel, there is no lookup, but definitely it's needed, right? So I think at some point they will add a drop-down selection, something like that, for the movement types. Okay. So at this stage there is not, but yeah, as we said, this is only a draft version of the Excel. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, you believe you mentioned before there's an Excel for each type of transportation. So the movement type, right, is only going to be a single one per Excel. So eventually that should just be a defaulted field anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is completely right. So this template, as far as we know, is used for both deployment and repatriation, because we received two different templates, right? This one that is repatriation and deployment, and then the other template that we received, let me show it to you. It's this is the one, the second template that we received, that is used for rotation. Okay, and as you can see in the rotation, All right, so we have two different forwarding orders. Okay, so we have the first one that relates to the first part, right, of the rotation from source to destination, in this case from Hamburg to Juba, that this is the first transportation, okay, and the system will create one forwarding order for that flight, and you have the same again, the chocks, the baggage, inbound flight, and the number of troops. And in this case, movement type, instead of set DE, we are using the set RO, okay, for rotation. And in the same Excel file, we are using, or we have the second part of the rotation. So from the destination to the source back again, okay, because this is a rotation of troops. So in this case, we have indicated that the forwarding order group number is another one, meaning that the system will automatically create two different forwarding orders. Okay, with the same Excel upload, the system will create two forwarding orders. And as Brian was saying, in this case, we should always be using set RO for as movement type. Okay, so if we are trying to perform a rotation scenario, we should always be using this template. So the ZRO will always be there. Okay, but for deployment and repatriation, as far as we know, there is only one template, that is this one, and we should be changing depending on if we are talking about deployment or repatriation. But maybe they will create because when we were there in New York, they were saying that there will be one template for deployment, another one for repatriation, right, Brian? Yeah. So anyway, it's still a working process. So maybe they will create a different template for repatriation, and the movement type will be defaulted there to set RE. Okay. For rotation, we didn't explain the fields, but are the same one. So tutor of duty, movement type, the base BTD reference, the Incoterm, okay, XWorks or DAP, and then we have again the BP for the TCC and the plant for the mission. Okay. All right. Okay. So once we have completed the so the users will fill in this information based on the passenger manifest, right? So when they sign the MOU with the troops contributing country, one of the documents that is attached to the MOU and the TCC country will provide is the passenger manifest with the details of each passenger, the number of passengers, the related baggage, and so on. Okay, so based on the different, based on those documents, they will fill in this Excel file. And as you can see, this is only a summary of the transportation requirements. Okay, but only for the purpose of managing the flights. So in here, you don't have the details of each passenger, and it's not a travel solution, right? So this is only to manage the transportation in terms of number of flights, in terms of number of baggage that we need to transport. Okay. All right. So once we have this Excel file, we can click on the button here, okay, to generate the files, okay, and the system will generate, as we said yesterday, one Excel file and one TXT file, and it will always, both files will appear in the same path where you have the template. Okay, so let me open my file. It's a little bit small, but okay. So this it's the file I have just generated. So today is the 9th. Okay, so the system has automatically created an Excel file and a TXT. And the TXT is the one we are going to be using to do the upload. And how can we do the upload? We can do the upload directly in TM. So let me open TM. All right. So in this training, we are using Q&A. Okay. And which one should I use? Have you started doing the exercises? Maybe you can guide me. So should I use ECC? Anyone? Q5T, very good. Q5T. And talking about roles, is going to be which role in TM. Did we talk about roles? Not yet, right? I don't think so. Okay, so let me open I think they haven't published yet the roles, right? But basically, these are going to be the roles, the new roles in TM. Okay, they will update the enterprise role guide, the PDF that is published in ISIC. Okay, but these are the 7 roles that they are arranging in TM. Okay, so you have the 01 that is the planner. Okay, the 02 that is the freight order manager, freight order management. 03 that is display. 04 for master data maintenance. 05 that is the one that will be granted to external partners to access CCP. 06 that is going to be for support, basically for your team, okay, and all the ones providing support for Umoja. And then there is number 7 that is the one that will grant access to the BI reports. So they are also building some reports that are still under design, okay, but there will be some BI reports, and this TS07 role will provide access to those reports. Okay, so Concheta already replied. Okay, and you're right. So I was gonna ask you about which role will do the upload of the Excel file. So basically, it's gonna be as Concheta replied. So the planner the TS01 role will be the one that will do the upload of the Excel file. So I'm gonna connect to TM as a planner. Okay. And we didn't mention, but the planners are also, so each planner will have access to their own, what we call planner group, right? So the ones granted access to troops, they will be able to plan transportation for troops, but they will not be able to plan transportation, for example, for COE or for UNOE. So planners are organized by planner groups. So each of them will be granted access to be able to, for example, do the uploads for COE or for troops, or to manage transportation for UNOE vehicles. Okay. So let me launch the NetWeaver business client. Okay, this can take a while. All right. Okay. All right. This is what I got. It's not what I was expecting. The web page cannot be displayed at this time. Okay. Okay. Anyway. All right. So let me try to open directly the TM by using the link. 1 second. Okay. All right. Okay, yesterday it was working, so I don't know. Let me do it again. TMQ5T. All right. It seems there is a problem with the. Okay, CCP is working, but log on. But the other one is taking. Okay, so here it is. All right, so this is already Q5T. I don't know if it's going to be a little bit slow. Let me connect as a planner for troops. All right, troops planner. Okay. Okay, and we will see that the tabs are very similar to the ones we saw yesterday for COE. So we have one tab to manage the forwarding orders, another tab to manage the freight orders. So don't get confused with these two very similar words. So forwarding order represents the upload of the Excel file. Freight order represents the different stages, the different legs in our transportation. Okay, once we have completed the planning. Okay, and then we have the planning tab that we can use to create our freight orders, to create our planning. Okay, our transportation planning. So in this case, that we want to do the upload, so we will use the forwarding order management tab. And in this case, we have all the options to manage our forwarding orders. So in the case we have already created them, we have the different reports available. And in this case, the first thing we need to do is to use the mass upload of forwarding orders. So we are not creating them manually in the system, but we are using the transaction that has been designed to do the upload from the Excel file. So we will do the mass upload. All right. And then we will need to do the execution in background, in foreground. Okay. We will find our file. Okay. So in order to find the file, it's a little bit tricky. We need to click on this button, okay? So in order to get access to our local disk, okay? So we will say import from native file system, and this system will provide access to our local drive. We will find our text file, open it, select the file. So we are using the, if I'm not mistaken, we did the export of our rotation, right? So remember our rotation file. We will ask the system to create 2 forwarding orders. Okay, one for the deployment, one for the repatriation. This is the Excel file that we created. So let's have a look at the text file. We can always open the text file to see the one that we are uploading. Okay, so we have the first part of the transportation and the second part. Okay, so this is the one that we are about to upload. I'm selecting the file, click on choose. In this case, we are uploading. If we are using this transaction, we should always be using the text file upload. We can make use of the test run just to see that everything is fine with the file. We do execute to see there is no error in the file. Okay, everything it's okay. We haven't generated yet the forwarding orders because we were in test mode. So I'm going to go back, remove the test run, and execute again. And the system will automatically create 2 forwarding orders. Okay, and the system will create 2 because we indicated 2 different forwarding order group numbers. So the system understands that we need to create 2, not because it's a rotation movement type, but because we have used 2 different forwarding order group numbers here. You see here the 1 and the 2. So these 6 lines will be included in the first forwarding order, and the second 6 lines will be included in the second forwarding order. Okay, it's a bit slow. Okay, so let's cross fingers and see that it will work. Right. So what will happen? So after we have uploaded the file, what will be the documents that the system will create automatically? Anybody knows which documents will the system will create automatically, and how many? In this case, in this rotation that we said that we were creating 2. Okay, 2 forwarding orders. Very good, Concheta. And what else? This freight orders, freight units. Okay, so you mentioned freight orders and freight units. So what about freight units? Will the system create also freight units automatically, or not? What do you think? So somebody mentioned that freight units will be created. So yes, and how many? So the answer is yes. Okay, so the freight units will also be created automatically, and how many depends on the legs. Okay, so we have one of you saying that depending on the legs. Okay, so at this stage you're getting confused with the freight orders. So freight units have nothing to do with the legs. So freight units represents the items that need to be transported from source to destination, no matter how many legs. So always keep in mind that there will be 1 freight unit per forwarding order. So the relationship is always 1-to-1. So in the case of troops, 1 forwarding order, 1 freight unit. In the case of COE, the same, 1 forwarding order, 1 freight unit. And in the case of UNOE that we were talking on Monday, 1 DTR, 1 freight unit. So the relationship between documents, between freight units and the predecessor documents, and in DTRs or forwarding orders, are always 1-to-1. So 1 forwarding order, 1 freight unit. All right. It seems there is a problem with the upload. Oh, okay. So finally, I was about to abort the transaction, but we were lucky. Okay, so here we have the 2 forwarding order number. Okay, so the first 6 lines were included in forwarding order ending with 341, and the return part of the transportation, it's assigned to forwarding order 340. Okay. In here we have all the information that we have uploaded, and in this case, in here doesn't appear the Incoterm. Okay, but we were referring to an XWorks, right? So let's have a look again to our Excel file just to see what type of upload we did. Okay, where is it? Incoterm XWorks. Okay, so we are in a non-LOA scenario in which we will need to arrange the transportation by ourselves, okay, to plan the transportation. And this system, let's have a look at one of those forwarding orders, okay. For COE, Brian, we were just clicking here, right, to hyperlink, okay. Yeah, or not. Yes, here it is. So I have just clicked on one of the forwarding orders, and we will see that the system has created the freight order and also the freight units. And there will be one freight unit. Wow, today it's really slow. So the system will have created one freight unit for each forwarding order. What about freight orders? Will have the system created also the freight orders in this case? What do you think? So we said that freight units, yes. So the freight units should appear automatically in the forwarding order document. What about freight orders? Should have the system created the freight orders automatically or not? No. Okay, so that's a good answer. So no. And why? Do we know why the system haven't created the freight orders? So freight orders represent the legs, right, in our transportation. So why shouldn't the system create the freight orders for each scenario? For this scenario. Okay. Any idea about the reason? I think we already mentioned yesterday that there was, I mean, depending on the type of transportation, the system was automatically creating the freight orders, depending on the scenario and what was triggering in the system because of the okay. So thank you, Maristela. Because of the Incoterm, all right. So depending on the Incoterm will indicate to the system if the planning will happen automatically or manually. Okay, so in this case, we chose XWorks. We chose a non-LOA scenario, and the planning is not done automatically. It's done manually. That's why the freight orders will not be created automatically. So sorry about that, but I don't know what's going on with the system. Okay, let me try to open it again. Let me close it. And okay, so our freight orders, let me take note of them, 341 and 340. Right, so, and now we can, as Brian was showing to you yesterday, we can go, and if we know the freight order number, sorry, the freight order, no, the forwarding order, you can see that we also get confused with the namings. It's not freight order, it's the forwarding order. So if you know the forwarding order number, you click on the display forwarding order, and you can type the forwarding order number. So in this case, it's 210000341. Okay, this is the one we have just created, and click on continue. Okay, launching. All right. And here we can see the different tabs for that particular forwarding order. So in this case, we can see forwarding order number and the freight unit. This is the one-to-one relationship we were mentioning before. So one forwarding order, one freight unit. Okay. You can see even the type of freight unit. It's a non-LOA troops. Okay. We can see in the forwarding order the different details. For example, if we go to the business partner or the items, in the items we will see the different products. I mean the chocks, the baggages, the passengers. So all the details that we included in the Excel will appear in the items. And in the general data, we'll see the Incoterm. So in the general data, we should be able to see that it's XWorks Incoterm. It's a non-LOA. Normally, it's instantly, right? When we change from tab to tab, it should be happening automatically. Okay, so we are talking about non-LOA scenario. We even have the buyer's reference number that we can use to look for our forwarding orders. This is the one we indicated in the Excel file. And then what else we have here? And in the related documents, in the document flow, we can click on the freight unit to see the details of the freight unit. Okay, so only one freight unit. So in this case, the freight unit is not per leg, but one for each forwarding order. Okay. All right. So in this case, that the system is not creating the freight orders automatically. So how can we plan our transportation? From where will I be able to create, or which option should I choose in the system to create the freight orders for this particular transportation? Where should I go? Or what's the functionality in the system for that purpose, to create the freight orders? Yeah, so I'm just trying, because we saw that in the document flow we don't have yet the freight orders, right? So how can I create the freight orders? How can I plan the transportation for this particular case, for this particular transportation requirement? So where should I go? I can go to the main screen, right? I can go to here and go to planning in order to initiate the transportation cockpit, right? So transportation cockpit is the screen you'll use to plan the transportation when we are talking about XWorks or non-LOA. And as Brian was indicating to you yesterday, you can always you can also initiate the transportation cockpit from the forwarding order. So this is the forwarding order. In the forwarding order document, you can also initiate the transportation cockpit by using the follow-up button. So in the follow-up button, you also have the option to start the transportation cockpit. Okay, so we can click on Start Transportation Cockpit, and by clicking on that link, we'll have the same effect as clicking here in this other one. So clicking Transportation Cockpit in the Planning tab will have the same effect as going to Follow Up and clicking on the other button in the forwarding order. Okay, so now we are launching the transportation cockpit, and the system will ask us to select the profile and layout. Which one should I use? Which one should I select in this case? Okay, so it should be the, in here you can see also the relationship. So XWorks refers to non-LOA, DAP refers to LOA. So we should be selecting, thank you Maristela, the non-LOA XWorks. Okay, that this is gonna be normally the one we plan manually. Troops LOA DAP is the one that should happen automatically, and only in the case we have an exception that we want to generate them manually, we should be selecting the one. So by selecting this one, the system will filter the freight units that will appear in the transportation cockpit. So if we choose the Troops non-LOA XWorks profile, the system will only show to us in the transportation cockpit. Remember that we have the main part of the screen in the transportation cockpit is the list of freight units that are pending planning. So in the screen part that shows the list of freight units, the system will only show to us the freight units that are pending planning and that have type that are related to troops, and that the Incoterm or the scenario it's non-LOA. Okay, so let us at least do the planning, and then we will go on break and complete the other part later. Okay, so in here, as we were saying, in here we have 4 different parts, but the main part we are using, at least for phase 1, that we don't have resources managed in the system, it's the freight unit stages. You can always maximize, as Brian explained to you yesterday. And in here you have the freight units that are pending planning, and all of them will be, you can even see here that the type it's ZFU5 non-LOA troops. So all of them will be of that type. So you can see there the type, right? This ZFU non-LOA troops. So you'll see that all the ones appearing here have the same type, and that's because we selected that profile before. So we selected all to be troops non-LOA. So this is all. You can be sure that all the freight units appearing here are related to troops and are related to non-LOA Incoterm. Okay, so let's select one of the freight units. Okay, so in here you have, I think it was the 801, the one we were from Juba to Bremerhaven Airport in Germany, and we can see that we have 2 freight units, same source, same destination, and even same departure date. So we could even request the system to transport or to manage these 2 transportation requirements together, and we can do that by selecting the 2 freight units, all right, and clicking on transportation proposals to request the system to transport both together. Because we can see that the loading and the unloading airports are the same, and the timing it's also the same. Okay, so it's within the, as Brian explained yesterday, is within the 7 days window. So let's try to combine them both together by clicking on the transportation proposals. And let's see which are the options that the system will show to us. Optimizer run failed. Wow, everything is very spying today. Okay, let's try to do only one. Transportation proposals. Let's refresh. Very good. There's something wrong with the system today. Transportation proposals. Okay. So the repatriation is not working, but the deployment it is. Now I selected the one that is, because we did the one for the rotation, so we had one free unit for the inbound, okay, and the other one for the outbound. So I don't know why the let's try to cancel and let's try again the repatriation. I mean, it should work in a similar way. Let's try to transportation proposals. Okay, yeah. So now it's working. Anyway, so in the end we selected the repatriation. So by clicking on transportation proposals, you can see the different proposals. And in this case, we mentioned that the main difference for troops is that we only manage the transportation from airport to airport, and that's why the proposals you can find less proposals, right? In this case, we have number 5, transportation proposal number 5 is the one using a direct flight from Germany to Juba. Okay, and then you have some other proposals with stopovers. So, for example, doing a stopover in Berlin or Düsseldorf, Frankfurt, and so on. So the transportation, it's always airport to airport. You always have the distance, duration, and the estimated cost. Okay. The freight estimated cost that we set is not appearing in any currency. It's just an internal estimation. It's in an internal number. So less means cheaper, more means more expensive, but there is no relationship in USD or any other. Okay, so this is only it's a hint for you to understand which one or which proposal would be cheaper or more expensive. Okay, we can select any of the proposals. So let's try to choose the direct flight. Okay, so let me try again with the combination, because I don't know why it was failing before. So let me try once more to do the combination. Okay, to do this one we set Juba. Okay, these two, same date, same source. So let's try once again, transportation proposals. No, this one is not working. Okay, so anyway, I don't know why it's not working to combine both. Okay, right. So let me select only for one and do the direct flight from Germany to Juba, and we will do accept planning to select that route, the direct flight from Germany to Juba. In this case, how many freight orders will the system create? Okay, so I mean, the answer is quite easy. So you can see here one line, right? Because we selected direct flight. So there is only one flight from Bremerhaven to Juba. There will be only one freight order. At this stage, if I don't save, I can still undo and replan again. So you can see here the concept of freight order. So if I select the direct flight, the system will only create one freight order. Let me try to undo and play a little bit more with the planning again. So let me redo the transportation again, transportation proposals, and let me select one. Oh my God, transport optimizer failed. Wow, transportation proposals. Okay, so instead of selecting the direct flight, if I select any of those with a stopover, let's say for example via Frankfurt, and I accept that planning, the system, instead of creating only one freight order, it will create two. So in here you can see reflected what we explained before about the concept of freight order and leg. So each leg in the transportation will become a freight order, meaning that the system will allow you to report events and attachments for each leg, for each part of the route. So if we select a route with a stopover in Frankfurt, the system will create two freight orders, one from Bremerhaven to Frankfurt, and the second one from Frankfurt to Juba. Okay. So if we like that that proposal, we click on Save, and the system will create the related freight orders. Okay. So I think at this stage we can do the break, and we will resume the session in 5 minutes at 10 past 10. Okay. So see you in about 5 minutes. Good morning, welcome back. So let's continue with the session. Before we continue with the demo, I wanted to rephrase a little bit because we have been discussing here internally about the maybe we didn't explain it well, the concept of the inbound flight, outbound flight, positioning flight, and the positioning flight. Okay, so this is something that they have been adding lately in the Excel file. Okay, so let's try to spend 1-2 minutes to explain to you what we understand and what's the purpose of positioning and depositioning. Okay, so basically the inbound, out, and the outbound flight have always been there. Okay, to represent the flights going in and out. Okay, so from the inbound flight will represent the flight from the mission, from the TCC country up to the mission. Okay, in this case from Germany to Juba, and the outbound going back from Juba to Germany. And then we have the concept of positioning and depositioning flight that is optional. Okay, and we should only be adding those two flights when we need to position the flight, meaning that if we don't have any flight available, in this case, for example, in Germany, and we need to position the flight in Germany in order to do transportation, we will add the positioning flight product to represent the need to have a flight, to have an airplane positioned in Germany for that transportation. Okay, and that was a request from procurement division because it has an added cost. Okay, so by adding a positioning flight, it will add an added cost to that transportation. Okay, so because I think that when we explained at the beginning of this session the inbound positioning, the positioning and outbound, it wasn't that clear. It's not something that we have 100% clear, but we wanted to spend 1-2 minutes more to a little bit provide to you a little bit more details on what we understand about positioning and depositioning. And the same thing will apply to the depositioning, right? So the depositioning will mean that once the airport has reached the final destination, I mean, once the airport is back to Germany, it has to be brought back to its original position, right? So when it could be a different city, for example, in Europe, okay, from where we positioned the flight at the beginning of the rotation. Okay, but the positioning was the positioning concept was something that was requested by procurement division to trigger additional cost in the transportation. So if we add positioning flight and depositioning flight, that will have an impact in the cost for that transportation. Okay.
I was just checking also on the internet the actual aviation terminology for this. Instead of calling it depositioning flight, they call it repositioning flight, which maybe makes a little more sense because eventually that's what you're doing. No, you're sending it back.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes. So thank you. Yeah, Adrian is adding some notes that are really interesting, right? So yeah, in this case, it's adding additional costs, right? Like the rental for the aircraft, the fuel, the crew, that are not part of that of the transportation, but in the end, it will have to be added. Those costs will need to be added because we don't have the flight available in the source city. Okay. I mean, it's something that we are also learning because they have been adding those quite recently, but okay, we don't expect you to have it 100% clear, but at least you have a notion of what's the purpose of positioning and depositioning. Okay, so let's move back to our transportation cockpit. So we have created two freight orders. Okay, because we used the option of having a stopover in Frankfurt. We have saved the freight orders, so at this stage we already have we already have the freight orders, and it will appear. They will both appear in the related documents, right? In the related documents, both for the forwarding order and the freight unit. And if we open one of them, okay, let's say, for example, we want to open the freight order, the second leg, the second freight order from Frankfurt to Juba. Let's see, what do we have there? So we'll have the general data, okay, business partner. So this is something that we already mentioned yesterday. Business partner, items, stages, and so on. Okay, and something we wanted to introduce today, because we didn't mention so far, is a little bit to provide you a little bit with the details for the master data that we didn't cover neither in the UNOE nor in the COE. Okay, and when we talk about master data, we have different types of master data. So we have some master data that is used by the system to calculate the charges. Okay, so this charge stub, that in this case it appears as 0. So the system should be calculating the charge estimate based on the master data. So if here appears as 0, it's because the master data is not properly maintained. Okay, and meaning that the master data maintainers, okay, the role that we mentioned before, this role, let's go back to our Word document. This master data maintainer, that if we click on it, it will tell you some details about the master data maintainer. So this TS04 will be responsible for maintaining business partners, vendors. Okay, this is more in ECC, but in TM there are two types of master data that needs to be maintained. One that relates to the transportation network, that we refer to them as locations, lanes, zones, meaning that which locations are connected to which ones. So based on the transportation network, the system will be able to retrieve the different proposals that appear in the transportation network. Okay, so once we launched the transportation network, you saw that the system was showing to us some possible routes, right? So we had some stopovers in Frankfurt, Munich, Berlin. So the system will know the different routes available based on the transportation network. Okay, so we have one part of the master data that is the transportation network, that at this stage is not yet clear who will be responsible for maintaining the transportation network. So it's not yet clear if it's going to be directly MoveCon in HQ maintaining the lanes, or it will be done by the master data team and requested with a form, as it's done for other type of master data, like the material master data and so on. And the second type of master data are the rates, that these rates are used to calculate the cost estimates. So if we properly maintain the rates, the system will be able to calculate the estimated cost for the transportation. So in this case, if the system if we see here 0, it means that the master data is not properly maintained. And what do we mean by master data? So we need in the system to reflect an estimated cost to transport items from each source to each destination. So in this case, we are talking about a freight order to transport a package composed of 200 troops 2 flights, 1 positioning and 1 inbound, and then the related baggages. Okay, and we even have the source and destination, right? From, in this case, it's from Frankfurt to Juba. So in the master data, we should have defined the cost to transport items from Frankfurt to Juba and for each type of product. Okay. So let me try to connect as a master data maintainer, just to show to you, we are not going to do it, but just to show to you those rate tables. Okay, now that because the rest of the process will be very similar. Okay, so from here to assign again the to procure the freight, assign the carrier, assign the freight PO, and then all the events that we saw yesterday for COE will be very similar for troops. So I wanted to spend some time with you to review the master data. Okay, so let me try to connect to TM, but instead of as a planner, I want to connect as a master data maintainer. Okay. All right. And now, 1 second. Let me get the user. So 1 user for master data maintainer. So now I'm gonna be logging in as a master data maintainer. Okay, so you can see that the system is the same. So we are still in TM, but the tabs that we have available are quite different. So in this case, we don't have the tabs available for planning or for displaying the forwarding orders or freight orders, but we have 1 tab that says master data, and we have options to maintain the transportation network, meaning to define locations, to define zones, and by zone we mean the different regions. So when you create, for example, a route, or it's called in master data, it's called a lane. If you create a lane to connect to different locations, you can connect each location to each location, or you can even specify lanes between zones, for example, countries. So countries will be zones and will include several locations, and then you can specify lanes to identify that different locations are reachable from one another, and you can do the same between zones. Okay, so we have options to maintain the transportation network, and you also have options to maintain rates, and this is what we call what's called in the system rate tables. So in the rate tables, let's display which are the rate tables available in the system. We can display the rates, and you'll see that you'll have a rate available for each transportation mode. So in the estimates, the ZRT estimates rates are the ones that will be used to calculate the estimates, and you have 1 per transportation mode, 1 for air, 1 for rail, sea, and truck. In the case of troops, that we said the transportation mode was always air, we should be looking at the air. Okay, I don't know why there's one that ends with N, but anyway, I want just to review a bit the concept of the master data for rates. So let me select the first one, and let's see what do we have in there. Okay. So you can see here, so this is the rate table definition for air transportation mode. Okay. You can see here that there is only one version for that rate table. That's what appears here in the dates and value. And on at the bottom of the screen, you can see the different rates available. And currently, we only have 3 different rates available for air transportation mode, and that's why in our scenario nothing was calculated and we saw a 0. Okay, so what do we have there? So let's try to open. Okay, so in the first column we have is the zone. Okay, and remember, zone represents a set of locations. So locations belong to one or more zones. Okay, so the easiest example about zones are countries. Okay, so in this case, we can specify rates for zones or rates between specific locations. If you specify an asterisk, it means that we are talking about any zone, and in this case, we are specifying a rate between 2 specific locations. So what the first rate represents is that in order to transport from Dhaka Airport to Bambari Airport, if we are transporting a big size flight, so this is an old kind of product. Okay, so we said that the products that should be used for flights are outbound flight or inbound flight. But before, because they have been changing those products quite a little bit, and before they were kind of having different type of flight, mid-size, small size, and big size, and that's why here it still appears as big size. But in a normal scenario, we should be seeing here, for example, inbound flight. So an inbound flight from Dakar Airport to Bambari Airport, that's the meaning of the first line. And on the right, we should be having the rates. Okay. And in here, we should be having the rates that normally it's done by cubic meter. So the meaning would be, so for each cubic meter, if we are transporting 100 or less than 100 cubic meters, the rate per cubic meter will be $15. Okay. If we are transporting more than 100 but less than 200 cubic meters, the rate will be 30. Okay. That it doesn't make any sense, right? Normally, it's the more you transport, the cheaper that it should be. But anyway, that's the example that is there in the Q environment. But the concept is that one. So if we are transporting 100 cubic meters or less, the rate per cubic meter is 15. If we are transporting more than 100 but less than 200, the rate per cubic meter is 30. If we are transporting more than 200 but less than 300, the rate per cubic meter is 45, and so on. Okay, so these are the rate tables that at this point are available for master data maintainers to specify the rates. Okay, they could even specify. So in our case, if we wanted the system to calculate the rates, let's say, for example, let's review again our freight order. So we are talking about a transportation from Frankfurt Airport to Juba. So we should be specifying here flight from Frankfurt, source Frankfurt, destination Juba. Okay, what could we specify as a product identifier? Okay, so we could say, because as items, which items do we have there? let's review back again our items. In the items, we have the chalk, right? We have the inbound flight. So we have the troops, position in flight, inbound flight, cabin baggage, or cargo baggage. So if we want to be very specific, we could even indicate how much does it cost each product. So we could even say a cost or a rate per troops, per member of the troops product, or we could just say, okay, we only care about inbound flight and position in flight. So if we have one inbound flight, no matter if we are transporting 200 troops or only one person, the cost will be, I don't know, will be that one per flight. Okay, so in the product identifier, we should be specifying the products appearing in our items. Okay, and then we will be able to specify the rates per volume. Okay, the rates per cubic meter depending on the size of our of the items we are transporting. Okay, so that was the main idea under the design for the rate tables. So we have one rate table per transportation mode. This is the one for air, but the other ones are the same. So the other ones behave in a very similar way. So the ones for sea, I think the one that is for sea is the one that we have more details. So this is the one for sea as transportation mode. You have the source location, destination, airport. We are talking about containers, break bulk, or other type of items, and the same thing by cubic meter and depending on the volume, right? Yeah. Okay, so the concept for the transportation costs remain the same. All right. So this is about the rate tables. Let me try to find something we have, because we had a presentation on the master data, and maybe it can also be useful for you to understand the part of the transportation network. So give me a second, and I'll try to find that one. Okay, because the other part, the part of the freight procurement, it's very similar. So let me go back in here. Okay, so this, I'm not gonna go again through what we saw yesterday, right? So the assigning the carrier and indicating the freight PO. So these things that we explained yesterday are gonna be very similar. So we already generated the freight order, and we didn't show you how to create the scope of work, but it's the same way you did yesterday for COE. Then the freight procurement will happen, and we still need to assign the carrier and assign the freight PO, but it's done in the same way as for UNOE and for COE. And then you have the execution and monitoring, that you have the possibility to submit events in TM and in CCP. Okay. The only thing here that maybe you should know is that for both for COE and for troops contributing country will not have access to a CCP. Remember that on Monday we said that even in a scenario, even in a DAP scenario where Nissan, for example, is delivering the vehicles to the missions, Nissan will have access to CCP to submit events. Okay, for COE and troops, the troops contributing country will not be granted access to CCP, so they will not be able to submit events. So we are not granting access to the TCCs to CCP, and in an LOA scenario, all the events, if needed, will have to be done on behalf of the troops contributing country directly in TM. And Brian was showing to you yesterday how to submit events in TM. Okay. In a non-LOA scenario, in which we have a freight forwarders will have access to CCP to submit events, and all their events and attachments will also be visible in TM. Okay. So in a non-LOA scenario, as in NextWorks, freight forwarders can always have access to CCP to submit events, but TCCs will not. All right. Okay. 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 So we have questions in the chat regarding the rate. So we have a question about if this rate thing is only for troops or for COE. So this thing that we are explaining today about rates and the tables applies to all the scenarios, UNOE, COE, and troops. The only thing is that we are explaining it today because it's a little bit more advanced, okay, but it applies to everything. So the transportation network and the rate tables applies to all type of transportation. So applies to UNOE, applies to COE, and to troops. Okay. And then Arian, the question about if the system will recognize that for 200 troops with baggage requires a large carrier. Okay, so the type of carrier or the type of flight or aircraft needed, it has to be selected automatically. The only thing that we have automatically in the Excel, that is something they built, is that the baggage entitlement is automatically calculated by the system, meaning that this number of, for example, the cabin baggage entitlement, it's done automatically, meaning that just by specifying the number of troops, the system will automatically populate in the Excel that the entitlement is 1 baggage per passenger, and the same thing for cargo. So the entitlement for cargo and the volume for that cargo baggage and the weight is calculated in the Excel template. It can also be edited manually, but it's based on the entitlement for the troops. So based on the number of troops, the cargo and cabin baggages entitlements will be somehow calculated based on the formulas. Okay, but then the type of flight needed in order to transport cargo and cabin baggage and the number of troops is not specified here. So you only have one type of flight. You don't have small, big, or medium. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me try to open the presentation that we have on master data. 1 second. Oh. Because we prepared a kind of overview of the transportation network that could be useful for you. Okay. 1 second. TM training. That was day 3, right? If I remember well. Yes, here it is. And we will also send it to you for your reference, because the other ones, the ones about the process, you already have it from the WebEx sessions that we delivered in December. But this one is just an overview presentation, but it could also be helpful. Okay, so in this case, we are going to be briefly talking about what we mentioned about the transportation network. Okay, so in here we have transportation network and the freight rates, and then there is some data that is automatically copied into TM, and that comes from SRM and ECC. All right. So in order to have, for example, the products, the plans in TM, all this data, it's part of what is called the CIF, the core interface between TM and other modules like ECC or SRM. So products, materials that are maintained in ECC are automatically copied in TM. Same thing for plants. So all plants available in ECC, there is an interface that copies those data into TM. Shipping points, so what we said, the delivery addresses in SRM are also copied in TM, and that's why it's important that requisitioners select one of the existing shipping points. Okay. Pickup locations, it's loaded from a file. Member countries, they are maintained as VPs in ECC and copied into TM. Vendors, the same thing, copied from VPs and carriers. Okay, so this data is copied from the business partner document, the business partner available in ECC. So there are some information that is copied and integrated directly into TM from ECC and SRM. And then transportation network, it's something that is maintained directly in TM, and we have different concepts. So we have the concept of location, that is the source and destination from the transportation. Okay, and we have different types of locations. We have, for example, we have terminals, ports, airports, and these source and destination locations are maintained directly in TM. Okay, some of them are copied or are copied from ECC, like for example the delivery addresses of emissions. Okay, and that will appear as shipping points. Okay, and some of them will be directly maintained in TM, for example, all the ports and airports. And TM will have the information for each location and the geographical data. So in TM will know each location where it's located in the map, because it has the GPS coordinates for each particular location. And that's why that's how the system can also draw the map. We saw, I think it was Monday, when we saw the map for the transportation. Okay, so that's the concept of location. And if we have a look at the master data, we'll see that we have locations as one of the parts for the transportation network. Okay. What else do we have as part of the transportation network? We also have the concept of zone. Okay. So the zone groups a number of locations. Okay, and zones are used to assign properties. If we don't want to assign or to define properties for each location, we can do that for the entire zone, and that will transfer all those properties to all the different locations that are part of that zone. Okay, so in here you have two different zones. One that is one country, okay, Japan, and then a region in Japan, okay, and each zone will have a set of locations as part of that zone, and basically we will be using zones to specify lanes, okay, to specify which locations are connected to other locations. Okay. So in this example, we have the two zones to which the port in Yokohama belongs to. Okay. So this is the concept of zone. Then we also have the concept of transshipment. So transshipment means locations in which we can do where we can do a transfer of means of transport, meaning that if a location is a transshipment location, we can use it to change the means of transport, meaning that to that location the items can reach by truck and then leave that location with vessel. Okay, so those are known as transshipment locations in the system, and basically handover locations, meaning ports, airports, are defined as transshipment locations in the system. Also, transshipment locations are used to, or can be used to consolidate goods. So in a transshipment location, in a port or an airport, we can consolidate different freight units. So different freight units can reach separately a port or an airport, and then they can be shipped together in the same vessel or in the same aircraft. And that's done by consolidating items in what's called in the system transshipment locations. Okay, that's basically concepts in the system that can be useful for you to understand the process later on. Okay, the concept of lane represents the reachability of between locations. Okay, between locations or between zones. So if we define a lane between two different locations, the system will understand that these two locations are connected, and the system will use those lanes when displaying the proposals. So in the transportation cockpit, the system was showing to us different proposals, right, for the transportation based on the source and destination. So those proposals are built based on the lanes available between locations and between zones. Okay, a transportation lane is defined by either source location or zone or destination locations. Okay, so we have to specify a source and a destination, and the source and destination could be either a location or a zone, and then a means of transport. So how, or the means of transport we will be using to connect those locations. It could be either an aircraft, or it could be either flight, sea, road. So that will be the means of transport. In this example, you have a lane specification between two ports, between Yokohama Port and Durban Port, with means of transport C. Okay, so you can see it. So that's the lane from Yokohama Port to Durban Port, and the means of transport is C. Can be used for COE or for UNOE. So we have different means of transport depending on the scenario we're talking about. So for COE or for UNOE, you have the validity, right, start and end date, the transportation duration in hours, and the distance in kilometers. Okay. So those are basically the concepts for the transportation network. Okay, so we talked about the locations, the zones, transshipment locations, and lanes. And also in here you have what we talked about before about the rate tables. Okay, So the rate tables, as we said, they are used to calculate the estimates, okay? And we have one per transportation mode. So we have one for air, rail, sea, and truck. And basically, we are using the volume, okay, in order to calculate the rates. And this is what we saw before in the system. So the rates are specified between locations, okay, source location to destination locations, or you can even specify rates between zones. So if you want to specify the rates for each particular location, you can specify the rates by zones, meaning by, for example, by countries, okay? If you want to get that specific and specify the rates by each specific location. And then you specify it for each threshold of volumes, okay? So in here, I mean, it's just an overview of the master data. There is a lot of still things to be clarified in terms of who will be doing what. Basically, what we understand is that rates will be maintained by procurement division in New York, by the team that is procuring the freight. So those will be the ones maintaining the rates. But for the transportation network, it's still unclear. So they don't know yet if it's going to be MoveCon, the ones maintaining locations, transshipment locations, and the lanes, or if they will use master data forms to request changes, and it will be the master data team in Brindisi the ones doing really the updates in the system. Okay. All right. So I think that was it for today. That I wanted to talk to you about master data. Yes, Concheta, I'll send you the presentation, the one we saw on the master data. I suppose that the other ones, the ones that we saw about the end-to-end process, that one you already have it, right, from December, because they are the ones we showed in the first WebEx session that we had in December. So do you have that one? Do you have this one? The one that explains the process, or we should be sending it together with the other one? Discard. So, 1 second. Do you all have this presentation? Yes, okay. All right, so we will send the one for master data. Any question before we close the session? And what we said, the most important part will be for you to connect to the system and try to practice a little bit with the planning, doing the upload, and going through the different screens. Because the documents look very similar: forwarding order, freight unit, freight order. So the best way for you to learn will be to practice each scenario from beginning to end and see how that reflects in the different documents. Okay. And I think we have a session for Q&A, so we will leave the WebEx link open tomorrow in case you have questions while you are doing the exercise. So tomorrow there is no presentation prepared, no session prepared from our side. It's just a link open for you to ask any question or to solve any kind of issue you're having while you're doing the exercise. Right, Ryan?
Exactly, it's mainly for that, so feel free to join if you're doing the exercises. We understand that we never said it was a mandatory thing to do the exercises and submit them back to us, but of course it's always good to practice, and please do so. And if you have any issues logging in, or maybe you just forgot something in terms of what to do in the exercise, or even things you've discovered or questions that may arise as you do the exercise, tomorrow would be a great day to start sharing that with us.
All right. So thank you, Brian. And we also have here Sol that is also trying to catch up with the project, and we are sure that she will be really helpful with this implementation. Okay. So we say hello to all of you, and to see. Okay.